You are now listening to a Vindistrict original.
This story includes depictions of violence, use of firearms, and references to drug use. It is intended for mature audiences. Reader discretion is advised.
The blood of broken trust. Malik's footsteps were light as he ascended the fire escape, barely making a sound on the metal steps. At the third floor he paused, listening intently for any signs he'd been heard. Only the hum of traffic and faint bass thumps from a neighbor's loud music reached his ears. He pulled a lockpick set from his jacket and went to work on the window. The cheap lock gave way in seconds. Malik slid the window open just enough to slip through into the dark apartment. He waited a moment for his eyes to adjust before moving through the small living room on quiet feet. His target was just beyond the bedroom door, unaware that justice was soon to be served. Malik had gotten Roland's address from a buddy who worked at the phone company. One quick hack into personnel files and he had everything he needed. Finding people who wanted to get back at Roland wasn't hard. The man had burned a lot of bridges with his underhanded business tactics, but Malik was the only one willing to take it this far. The bedroom door whined on its hinges as Malik eased it open. Moonlight filtering through thin curtains provided just enough illumination. Roland's bulk was visible under the blanket's chest, gently rising and falling. Malik slid the knife from the sheath at his belt. 8 inches of merciless steel, hungry for vengeance. Malik stood over Roland, clutching the knife tightly. One quick slash across the throat, and it would be over. But Roland didn't deserve a quick death. Not after what he did. Malik placed the tip of the blade just under Roland's chin, ready to thrust it upwards into his brain. Roland's eyes flew open, mouth opening to scream. Malik clamped a hand over Roland's mouth. "Shh, it's me." Roland's eyes were wide with terror. He tried to speak, but Malik's grip kept him silent. "I want you to know why this is happening," Malik said, keeping his voice low and steady. "I gave you 10 years of my life, busted my ass making your club successful, brought you big money while I scraped by on pay. Then you stabbed me in the back." Malik eased his hand off Roland's mouth. The club owner sucked in a breath to yell. Malik shoved the knife against his throat, drawing a bead of blood. "Don't. I didn't come here to listen. I came here to make you pay." Malik's voice shook with fury. "You promised me a partnership, but you gave it to Brad instead. A useless kid you knew for 2 months. You betrayed me." "I'm sorry," Roland whimpered. "Please, I'll make it right." Malik shook his head. "Too late for that." He raised the knife, ready to finish it. Roland's hand darted under his pillow, coming out with a snub-nosed revolver. He fired wildly. Searing pain tore through Malik's side as the bullet grazed him. Malik slashed with the knife, opening Roland's forearm to the bone. The gun dropped from his mangled hand. Malik collapsed to the floor, clutching his side. Blood seeped between his fingers. Roland was shrieking, cradling his wounded arm. Lights flicked on in neighboring apartments. Someone pounded on the front door, demanding to know what was happening. Malik had failed. He struggled to his feet, stumbling to the window. As he awkwardly climbed out, he heard Roland's voice, shouting into a phone. "Help! I've been attacked!" He went out the fire escape. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Malik half climbed, half fell down the fire escape. He had to get away. Back to his car 2 blocks over. Put pressure on the wound. He couldn't go to a hospital. They'd call the cops for sure. Malik slipped through alleys and side streets, staying in the shadows. He ripped off his blood-soaked shirt and tied it around his waist to slow the bleeding. By the time he reached his car, he was lightheaded and gasping. He collapsed into the driver's seat, fumbling for the med kit in the glove box. Bandages, quick clot powder, a vial of tramadol. Malik treated his wound with shaking hands. He dry swallowed 2 of the bitter pills. When he finished, blood stained the car's interior. He had to ditch it. But he needed help first. Someone he trusted. Malik started the engine. There was only one person who might still take him in. He just hoped she wouldn't turn him away like all the others. 20 minutes later, he pulled up outside a small house on a quiet street. Her house. His vision was starting to go dark at the edges by the time she opened the door. "Malik! My God, what happened?" Carrie's face was etched with concern. "I messed up," he mumbled, leaning on her heavily. "Need help." Carrie guided him inside, sat him on the couch. He faded out for a minute while she cleaned the wound. When he came to, she was wrapping a fresh bandage around his abdomen. "What did you do?" Carrie asked quietly. He shook his head. "You're better off not knowing." "Geez, Malik, is it as bad as it looks?" He didn't answer. She knew anyway. Carrie finished tending to him in silence. She retrieved a pillow and blanket, making him as comfortable as she could on the couch. Exhaustion finally pulled Malik under. When Malik awoke hours later, sunlight was streaming through the windows. The smell of coffee and bacon cooking drifted from the kitchen. He stood gingerly. The makeshift bandage was holding, but the pain was still intense. Carrie appeared in the doorway, regarding him with a somber expression. "Hungry?" Malik shook his head. "I should go. Don't want to bring trouble here." "Wait." She crossed the room and took his hand. "Stay a while, please. I haven't seen you in months." He looked into her pleading eyes. Part of him wanted to stay in her warmth and affection, but he'd given up any claim to those things long ago. "I can't, Carrie. It's better if I disappear." Her face fell. She looked down, blinking back tears. "Will I ever see you again?" Malik tilted her chin up. "Someday maybe, when it's safe." He pulled her close, inhaling her familiar scent for what might be the last time. Then he took her phone and quickly entered his number. "If you ever need me, call this number. I'll do whatever I can." Malik let her go and headed to the door. She followed him out. "You know I'm here for you, whatever you need," Carrie said. Malik climbed into his car, wincing at the ache in his side. He glanced back and saw Carrie standing in the doorway, watching him go. He raised a hand in farewell. Then he turned the corner and left her behind. Over the next 2 days, Malik disposed of his car, bought a cheap replacement under a false identity, and found a new place to lay low. He knew Roland wouldn't let it go. Not when Malik had years of dirt on him. Roland would be desperate to permanently silence the only witness against him. Sure enough, a week later, Malik spotted a black SUV parked down the block from his motel. 2 guys sitting inside making no attempts to conceal their surveillance. Malik kept his head down as he slipped past them. He spent the next hour confirming he'd picked up a tail. Roland's thugs were marked, likely ex-cons hired for dirty work. That night, Malik left the motel discreetly on foot after scoping out the rear lot. He crossed a vacant lot strewn with trash and discarded tires sticking to the shadows. Approaching a chain-link fence, he heard pursuing footsteps. Malik whirled, swinging the tire iron clutched in his hand. It connected with the first thug's knee with a satisfying crunch. The man bellowed in pain, toppling to the ground. His partner rushed Malik, throwing wild punches. Malik sidestepped neatly and brought the tire iron down hard on the back of the man's skull. He collapsed like a sack of bricks. Malik quickly searched them. Just cheap pistols, nothing serious. He left the moaning, cursing men there and climbed the fence. As he dropped to the other side, gunshots split the air. Bullets whined off the fence where he'd been seconds before. Malik sprinted away into the darkness. He spent the rest of the night running and hiding. By the time he returned to the motel the next afternoon, a police car was parked outside his room. Malik watched from behind the adjacent building as 2 detectives questioned the manager. After they left, Malik waited around roughly 45 minutes before entering his room. He grabbed his duffel bag and was gone a minute later. Everything he owned was in that bag. Some clothes, a spare burner phone, his lockpick set, and a Glock 19 pistol. The cops likely had a bolo out on him, Malik figured. But if they'd searched his motel room, they would have taken his meager belongings as evidence. Either way, staying in the city was too risky. He needed to get out, maybe hitchhike somewhere remote until things cooled down. He'd nearly made it to the highway when his phone vibrated with an unknown number. Malik hesitated, then answered. "Yeah? Malik, it's me." Carrie's anxious voice. "Are you okay? Did something happen?" "I'm fine, but you're in danger. 2 men came around asking about you. They showed me a picture of you leaving a motel. Said you were wanted for attempted murder." I didn't tell them anything, I swear. Malik clenched his jaw. He should have known Roland would spin it to make him look like the bad guy. Thanks for the warning, he said. I gotta go. Wait, let me help you. We'll go to the cops together, get you a lawyer. No cops. I'd never make it to trial alive. Carrie was silent for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was steady. Come to my place tonight, after midnight. I'll have a bag ready for you, some cash too. We'll figure the rest out, I promise. Malik hesitated. He'd already put her at risk by going there once, but he was running out of options, and he desperately wanted to see her again. Okay, I'll be there. Malik tossed the burner phone and kept moving. He watched Carrie's house for over an hour after arriving, looking for signs of a stakeout or trap. Nothing. At exactly 12:30 a.m., he slipped from the shadows and approached her back door. It opened as he climbed the steps. Carrie pulled him inside, wrapping her arms around him tightly. I'm so glad you're okay. Malik returned her embrace, savoring the comfort of it. She led him to the kitchen table, where a large backpack waited. There's some clothes, toothbrush, maps, burner phone, almost $6,000 in cash. She smiled hopefully. Think it'll help? It's perfect. Thank you, Carrie, for everything. Malik leaned in and kissed her softly. Her lips were just as warm and tender as he remembered. When he pulled back, her smile faded. Malik, there's something I need to tell you. He heard a sharp click from the doorway. Malik turned to see a heavy-set white man pointing a revolver at him. Vinny, the biggest fraud in the city. 2 more armed men appeared behind him. I'm sorry, Carrie said quietly. They made me do it. Malik stared at her, heart sinking into his stomach. He'd trusted her, and she had betrayed him. Vinny grinned smugly. Mr. Roland sends his regards. He wants to make sure you're properly thanked for visiting the other night. Malik gauged the distance to his backpack with the pistol inside. Too far. He was trapped, all because he'd foolishly let his guard down. You sold me out, he said to Carrie, unable to keep the hurt from his voice. I'm so sorry. Tears streamed down her face. They threatened to hurt my family if I didn't cooperate. You have to understand. Malik just shook his head in bitter disappointment. Vinny chuckled. Enough talking, let's go, dead man. They shoved Malik down the hall toward the front door. He racked his brain for options, but found none. This was really the end of the road. Then Carrie screamed his name. Malik turned just as she flung herself onto Vinny's arm, slashing at him with a kitchen knife. His gun roared, the bullet tearing through her stomach. Carrie collapsed with an agonized wail. Chaos erupted. As the others turned to their wounded leader, Malik seized his chance. He dove past them into the kitchen and snatched the backpack with his Glock inside. He spun and fired rapidly, dropping 2 of the armed men. Vinny had turned his revolver toward Malik. Another pull of the trigger, and Vinny's head snapped back, his corpse toppling onto Carrie. Malik rushed to her side. Blood poured from her belly. Her face was already turning ashen. Why did you do that? Malik asked raggedly. She gave a faint smile. Couldn't let them take you. Malik pressed his hands over her wound helplessly. She wasn't going to make it. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Carrie grasped his hand with the last of her strength. Go, now! Then the light faded from her eyes. Malik knelt over her body, tears flowing freely. She'd sacrificed herself for him, saved him from capture or death, forgiven his mistakes, loved him unconditionally in the end. The sounds of approaching police cars shook Malik from his anguish. He couldn't help Carrie now, but he could honor her by finishing what he'd started. Malik rose and went out the back. He disappeared into the night filled with fresh purpose. Roland had taken the last pure thing from him, and Malik would make sure he paid for that, and for all the others he'd harmed, no matter what it took. Justice would be done. He silently promised Carrie that much before she faded from his sight forever. To be continued.
Follow Vindistrict Tots for weekly stories.